Alex. Cool. So welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us after hours here. For those on the East Coast, very after hours. For those on the West Coast, it's 5 o'clock. So excited to spend the next 60 minutes with you all. A little housekeeping. So we have a couple of questions that we prepared, or I prepared for the panelists. I'm going to introduce them in just a second. But there is a Q&A panel. I think your Zoom looks a little bit different than mine, but there should be a Q&A panel. Someone already typed into it. It would be great as we get started here, if you could chat in. I know you're asking a question, but chat in and tell us just your level of or where you're at in your career. So I'd love just to hear very briefly, are you just starting out in product marketing? Are you sort of somewhere in the middle of your career and you're looking for that next next hurdle that you want to take on? Maybe that's management, maybe that's kind of a specialty within product marketing. Or are you a product marketing leader and you just want to hear from these other awesome leaders that we get to talk to today? If you could chat in, that makes it a little easier for us, for all of us on the panel, to sort of provide some better context for all of you. We want to make this session as interactive as possible. Like I said, we have 60 minutes here to go through it. So 30 minutes, we're going to kind of go through a couple of questions that I prepared. I hope they're going to be really helpful for you all. At the same time, outside of just typing in a little bit about you and your career on the chat panel, also feel free to ask questions. I'm going to spend the second half of the session here just taking those questions and bringing them to our panelists today. And we'll basically try to get through as much as we possibly can. So that's the plan. All right, so we have an awesome panel here today. We have Jameelah from Eventbrite, we have Nisha from HubSpot, and we have Jeff from Calendly. Super excited to have each of you here today. I want to start off with, I think, a really great icebreaker question, which is, what did you study in college? Because most of us that end up in product marketing did not start by studying product marketing in college. I'd be surprised if any of you did. I'd be surprised if anyone on the panel or anyone attending today did. So Jeff, maybe we'll start with you. What did you study in college?
Yeah, I studied English literature, and you weren't supposed to be able to get a job with that. So proved them wrong, but was hoping to be a professor of literature instead of going into marketing. Awesome,
cool. Nisha, how about you?
Wow, I was not so far. I guess I studied marketing and management information systems. So I was a little bit on the left side of the brain and the right side of the brain. Yeah, and my first job then out of that was product management.
Okay, all right, that's closer. That might be the closest. But let's see if Jameelah can one up you. What did you study in college, Jameelah?
I studied economics and political science. And to me, I always thought I was going to be a behavioral economist because I love thinking about how people make decisions and what drives behavior. So I actually feel like that's pretty much what we do in product marketing. So yeah. Maybe it came true in the end after all.
Okay. All right. So everybody had something sort of that I could see in my head sort of led to product marketing in some way, even English literature. I was an English major as well, Jeff. I did comms and writing, a little bit different, not literature, right? But sort of close. Let's jump in. So all of you are leaders, product marketing leaders. I'd love to hear a little bit about the moments in your career that led you to that leadership role. So whether that's switching companies, whether that's a boss leaving or getting a new boss who's a great mentor, or crushing a project that you're working on. I'd love to hear a little bit about what are those moments. I think the audience would get a lot from that. So Nisha, maybe we'll start with you. What were some of those moments in your career, or maybe the moment that led you into this, into your product marketing leadership role?
Yeah, sure. It's a good question. I would say it was probably at American Express. I spent about a little over 5.5 years there. But my first job going at American Express, I was hired as a product manager. About 2 weeks after I was hired in, my director got a larger job, and we switched jobs essentially, and I didn't have any director there. And the way I saw it, there was 2 ways to go about it. Either you were lost and just waiting for them to fill out that director role, or I saw the opportunity as being able to kind of just step in and take on a broader role. And that kind of led me into essentially designing the entire product, talking to customers and understanding what the product should include. It went into, putting metrics around what success looks like, how many subscriptions we would get, doing the P&L. Also then, negotiating and working with my marketing teammates to understand how I would, get my product in market and where they would be able to put it for me. So it just was kind of those in the moment that I had to kind of step up and decided to inadvertently take that rather than just waiting. And that worked out really well. I learned that I could do it. I think that got me a lot of good visibility. It got me a lot of good leadership visibility where I wouldn't otherwise have it. And I think that just set me up for, I think coming out of that in about a year, I got promoted to director myself. So it was a good opportunity.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you for sharing. Jameelah, how about you? What are those moments in your career that got you into the role you're in today?
Well, first, I love Nisha's story because my story also happened at American Express.
Small world.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about that yet. But it's of course, a great company. And one of the aspects of it is that there's a lot of internal mobility, generally every 2 years. So similar to Nisha's story, my boss at the time, I was working with her, kind of building an internal startup there, got pulled into a bigger role. And she was really wonderful and actually kind of brokered my next role after that at the same time that she was getting her new role. And it wasn't going to be working for her. It was a completely different division of American Express, but she was well networked in the organization. She knew what I was interested in and went and talked to that other hiring leader and was like, hey, I've got somebody for you. I'm going to transition out of this role. I don't want her to stay in this kind of internal startup that might not have the support and kind of investment going forward now that I'm not here. And so she literally texted me at 7 a.m. I was at SoulCycle. I remember, and she's like, we need to talk. And she's like, hey, I'm taking a new role. Literally tomorrow it's going to be announced, but I've already brokered your new role. Let me know by tonight if you want it, basically.
Wow.
And it ended up being my first people leader role. It was my first product marketing role at the time. Like I said, I was more of a GM, business development role previously to that. So this was my first foray into product marketing, my first time being a leader, a people leader. And so I really credit mentorship and having, phenomenal leaders who you have an open dialogue with, who can set you up for success in your career. And so that role was a turning point for me for sure.
Awesome. Yeah. Mentorship, bosses moving around, a boss that makes a move and then makes a move for you on your behalf and then texts you at 7 a.m. and says, just decide.
Buckle up.
Pretty good. Yeah, it's pretty good. Could you tell us a little bit, I think this is an interesting point, like a little bit about that transition from business development, sort of GM role to product marketing? Because there's definitely some similarities, but I imagine there's also some big differences. What was that transition like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to lie. There were some late nights and sometimes some tough moments. What was interesting about my first product marketing role is that it was, and of course, Nisha, you know how American Express is set up, but it was in the merchant business. And so it was primarily supporting what is essentially a sales team that is meant to tell all of our merchants from multinationals all the way down to mom and pop about new payments technologies. And at the time we were launching the chip cards in the US and contactless payments in the US as well. And so learning those technologies and the ramp up there was, crucial to my success. And I remember just asking product managers for work to give me literal walkthroughs of the entire journey and flows on the back end, not just the user experience, but literally what the logic was in the back of the systems. And I recommend this to any product marketer who's coming up to speed, like not just front end experience, really understand the logic on the back end as well. Get hand in hand with your product managers to understand it at the deep level. The second piece was all about really understanding this global sales organization. It was, about 1,000 people across all different geographies. And so understanding how to work, how their processes were, what their pain points were, treating them actually as my end customer. So kind of doing that product marketing treatment where you do research and you understand core needs and you segment. And I did that to the sales team. Like I was like, okay, there's this segment in this sales team, there's this segment, some are more experienced, some aren't. And that really helped me kind of understand how to navigate. But it was a lot of guess and check as well. And ultimately, I think there's definitely one aspect where I didn't know that role was product marketing at the time. This was before product marketing was kind of codified as a thing. So they were just like, oh, there's this role where you kind of need to talk to the sales team and like translate some stuff from product. Why don't you do that? And I was like, okay, cool. So there was also this aspect of figuring out what the job was. And so that was probably one of the elements that made that transition a bit more tricky. But once I understood that, oh, this is product marketing, there are resources out there, there are mentors I could speak to, that just made it so much easier. And I started to realize that I really love doing this. And so kind of that set the rest of the trajectory of my career now.
Awesome.
Jameelah, what you said like so resonated with me. There's two things there. One, if I may, Dan, just being the nuances of the product, right? Like you talked about back end and knowing the back end, but I can't even tell you how many times I see product marketers that do not know how to demo their product or actually haven't gone in and are able to do that. And to me, that's it. Like every product marketer, you should be able to jump on and be able to walk through your product and actually do a demo yourself. It sounds pretty simplistic, but if you don't know how to do that, definitely take the time. And I'd say the second one, many product marketing roles they're very nebulous. You actually, you're hired in and it's like, oh, well, you tell me what needs to be done over here, right? So it's like you're almost coming up with is this actually the right time to do pricing, or is it that the salesperson doesn't know the pain points of the customer? You're kind of framing the strategy as you go. So know that as well, because sometimes you're like, well, I'm here now. What do I do? Why did you hire me? You kind of have to frame that sometimes yourself as well.
Totally. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Nisha. Jeff, let's let me repeat the original question because we went down a couple of roads there, which was great. The original question, Jeff, was those moments in your career, that kind of led you into the leadership role that you're in today.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about those moments for you.
Yeah, and plus one to what everybody was saying about being able to demo. I think that's what kind of can catapult you into a leadership role, is being able to public speak, being able to demo, being able to sell. It was actually probably harder for me to get a job in marketing right out of college, with an English degree, than it was to get into product marketing. And I think I just got lucky because I had music industry experience as like something I did as like an internship in college, and my family owns a music venue, and I ended up getting hired by an agency that was like 150 people in multiple cities, marketing agency, and their client was the Recording Industry Association of America. So got completely lucky. Every other agency didn't hire me. And I ended up reporting to, a department leader who also was in charge of all the new business, all the agency sales for the agency. So he would bring me into these new business pitches, and it was, lots of new business pitches all the time, pitching to CEOs. And I was doing this as like a 22-year-old, helping him out. He would just throw me right into the water. And I think that kind of got me comfortable with presenting to executives. And then, probably around age 23, they let me manage a team there, which was very fortunate to be able to do that. And I mean, my people that were reporting to me were about the same age as me, but I got to start to work with CEOs and VPs of marketing of different tech companies. And that was just, I learned a lot. And I always went into those situations in early days with a lot of anxiety. And I see product marketers dealing with the same thing, and my heart goes out to them, because it is difficult to be able to, deal with somebody who's a couple decades older than you, and you're having to present to them and negotiate with them and convince them of your messaging and all that. So I think I was just very fortunate early on to get exposed to sales within marketing, as well as managing a team pretty early on. What ended up happening later is I took the dive into startup world. probably about, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago. And I switched from agency to startup world, and I became the VP of marketing for a very tiny startup that got acquired. Which everyone knows in a tiny startup is basically, an IC role for the most part. Had a couple of people reporting to me. I ended up getting put from VP of marketing into director of product marketing at Hewlett Packard Enterprise. And that was my foray into marketing. But fortunately, my agency life, we had to do a lot of positioning and messaging, a lot of writing, a lot of product marketing like work, that it was a, not a simple transition, but it was doable.
Yeah. I think we could probably go down the agency to product-based business conversation, because it sounds like there's a bunch of things there. I do want to be mindful of time. In 10 minutes, we're going to kind of switch over to answering questions from the audience. I did want to do a quick update as well that we got we got like 10 people that chatted in, gave me a little bit of background, or I guess everyone can see this, of their experience. So it looks like a lot of people sort of are within their product marketing career. So I don't see a lot of people that are, outside of product marketing trying to make the leap in. But we do have several people that are sort of just starting out in their product marketing career, sort of mid-level in their product career. I think there's a couple people here that are in leadership roles. So great to have that context, I think, for us in the conversation. If you're listening in, please feel free to chat in and ask a question use the Q&A panel. Zoom should really just have it all be one thing. That's a product marketing issue right there, right? Chat and Q&A should be one panel. It shouldn't be two different things, but that's okay. We'll give them that feedback later. Use the Q&A panel. Feel free to send in some questions. I do want to transition into your questions for any of the panelists here with us today. I had another question though, before we get to that. It sounds like, given the audience, a lot of people are interested in sort of moving forward in their career, working their way up the ladder in product marketing. So let me ask each of you this: how do you get promoted on your team? I imagine each of you are people managers here. I imagine you've all had this, either you have some definition or you've gone through the process of hiring and promoting people within your team. So Nisha, maybe we'll start with you. How does someone on your team get promoted?
Yeah, I think it starts with you've got to get stuff done, right? And you've got to actually really be able to. So our organization is pretty big, right? And it's got many, many different parts to it, and working cross-functionally and being able to show results meaningfully over a period of time is kind of the first step to getting yourself promoted. So you know how to do the work, you've launched products, you've launched messaging, positioning, you know how to communicate. Your stakeholders are saying good things about you, in that you're able to take their opinions, you're able to work cross-functionally and bring people along the ride. That's kind of table stakes to get you. Then I think it's also what Jameelah touched upon is making sure that people around you and your network knows what you're going for, and what your goals actually are. Because as leaders, we're not mind readers, right? So if you're not actually sharing where you want to be or what your aspirations are, you have to say it out loud for people to actually come and support as well. So it might sound very basic, but I can't even tell you, like, I once did an international assignment in Asia and in Singapore, and that was from virtue of putting it on my growth plan to say I would like to do an international stint. And then when that came up, I was kind of in the running for it. So that's another part of it, is what I would say. And then also look for opportunities. They're not always the sexiest roles. Look for sidestep opportunities where it's not just career, is not just like a ladder, right? But I've taken roles that are in different departments to round myself off. Jameelah talked about time and role at Amex, but I went from a product manager role to an acquisition role to a business development role. And that was really helpful to round me off and understand different paths as well to get this. I broadened my expertise, if you will.
Awesome. Yeah, consistency, collaboration, make it known that you want to, what you want, I guess, to your leader. I think that's a great line, that leaders aren't mind readers. They don't know what you want. You got to make it clear. And then working cross-functionally, getting experience, across different parts of the team. That's That's really good. Jameelah, how about you? What are some of the things that you were looking for from someone on your team for them to get promoted, to get to that next level in their product marketing career?
Yeah, absolutely. I think definitely to build on what Nisha mentioned on speaking with your leader and raising your hand. One aspect of that is also creating a plan for your promotion. So I hope all of you guys are aware, with calibrations, there's a group of people in the room. We don't actually sit around a big table, but that's what it feels like, discussing the talent on the team. If only one person can speak up on your behalf in that room, that is definitely going to be a barrier to your ability to get promoted. So in general, when I know someone's going up for promotion, even for myself getting promoted earlier this year, we talk about who is going to be in that room and what projects, again, cross-functionally, you could do to actually make sure that that person has something to say about your work and your impact, and being really kind of strategic. Again, maybe this goes back to my economics and game theory here, but about, how are you going to show value to each of the people who will be the decision makers? So I think that's one very specific, tip that I like to give people. And the second piece around delivering results, to me, it's not just about results that drive kind of incremental growth, but really around opportunities to show step change. So is there a way that you really took something from 0 to 1, whether that was a particular landing page that hadn't existed before, a particular new workflow in your customer marketing that hadn't previously existed before. So you can figure out what scale that looks like for the role and experience that you're currently at, but always be looking for those opportunities, not to just optimize, but to inflect. And that's really where you're going to get that story that's going to resonate across the business. And then those stakeholders will really be able to support and fight for you to get that promotion.
Yeah, I really love that answer. I can think of being in that room, and I think of doing quarterly reviews, and with, I had several people on my team outside of product marketing, but when it came to the product marketer, there's always too many people to ask in a way because they work so cross-functionally. And so if you think about that from a leadership perspective and other leaders, you really want to feel like for product marketing, it's a resounding yes, there's confidence and this is the person, and there's probably plenty of feedback out there. So that's a really good one, and I think great for product marketers to think about. Jeff, how about you? What does someone on your team have to do to get promoted? What are you looking for from them?
Yeah, and I think actually Jameelah brings up a really good point that not at some companies, at our companies this way, probably your companies this way, where there's actually a committee of marketing leaders who are looking at all the talent when it's review time, and they're weighing in, right? And so you do, as a product marketer, have to do good work for them, right? And it's not a democracy. They're not all voting on it, but they are weighing in. At other companies, it's not the case. So one of the things you want to find out, I think, as an employee, is find out from your people team before you even join, how do people get promoted there, right? In some companies, it's very informal. It's like, hey, I'm threatening to leave, promote me, right? It's not that way in our company, and it's not that way in committee-based environments. At our company, it's both. There's IC promotion, right? There's the P levels, and then there's the manager promotion, which is the M levels. And we follow the Radford system that a lot of HR people team use, where as a manager, I need to write down, and with my other managers who report to me, we write down kind of what you need to do to get various P levels, right? As well as various M levels. So, I don't want to go too far into both, but let's just take the P levels, since there might be a lot of ICs here. For me, as just a straight up product marketing manager, you need to be able to do the work of all the different areas of product marketing, from research to positioning and messaging to sales and CS enablement to launches to being able to do ongoing adoption marketing, right? And that's kind of like table stakes. And then to get to senior level, you need to be excelling at all those versus peers. I think what gets you to the next level from there is you need to be somebody that can't just do the work, right? But you need to be able to go in sticky situations that are sometimes political, with product management leadership, sales leadership, CS leadership, marketing leadership, who all maybe want different things and you're in conflict, and be able to handle that situation and move things forward in very sticky situations without it visibly rattling you and hurting your feelings and making you want to feel defeated and victim-y. I think the best ICs can be able to really handle those situations versus just do the work.
I feel like we should have enabled the whiteboarding feature for you, Jeff, on that one with the multiple levels, the P's and the M's. It could have been a good visual there.
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay, so it's 5:30 in the dot. Let's take some questions from the audience. So again, reminder, feel free to use Q&A panel, add a question. I'm going to review the questions and I'm going to pass them on here to the panelists to answer. Any panelist that wants to answer first, feel free to answer. So here's our first question. This is from an anonymous attendee. I don't know if you want to be anonymous or not, but you're coming up anonymous. Feel free to let us know who you are if you want, but it's a great question. So let's share it. As a senior/staff PMM, what are the best ways to find a mentor? And when you find one, how do you ensure you're getting the most of the relationship? What are some asks you have going into the relationship? So how do you find a mentor? And when you find them, how do you get the most out of the relationship? Who wants to answer that one first?
I'm happy to start us off. So definitely, I think one of the things that is underappreciated in mentorship relationships is that the best ones are really a two-way street. So I just want to start with that because oftentimes you think of finding a mentor as primarily trying to find someone who looks like they have the profile that's going to be the most helpful to you. And I think there is something that is around a kind of friendship chemistry that is really what makes a mentorship relationship powerful. Even the examples that I shared earlier about the leader who was also not only my leader, but my mentor and a sponsor. She went on her own to get me another job, right? That sponsorship, that was built through the core chemistry we had as people who enjoyed speaking to each other, who enjoyed learning from each other, who saw and respected each other's potential and journeys. And so I would say that to me is the core thing you should be thinking about when it's a mentor. And so how to find them, number one, go out and meet people. Go out and meet people and follow up with the people that you genuinely connected with, that the conversation flowed, that the questions were going back and forth between you easily. Those are the relationships that you're going to be most equipped to continue following up on, to, have interesting things to talk about and to share with each other. So that's number one to me. The second piece then is all about how do you make that a productive relationship, right? You mentioned how do you get a lot out of it. I think number one is being in general curious about who they are as a person. How did they get to where they are? What do they value? Because you learn so much through just getting to know that person, the challenges they navigated, the inflection points in their life and their career, decisions that they had to make. That can really specifically help you. And then when you're trying to do something in a specific inflection point in your own life, that's when you can start to ask more directive questions of your own about, hey, I'm kind of considering this new role, but it's in a much smaller company than I've ever been in before. How have you ever navigated that, right? Think genuinely about what experiences they had, be curious about them as a person, and then look into yourself and be curious about what are the things that you're struggling with potentially. And same as you would go to an advice from a friend or a family member, that's the type of conversations you want to be having with a mentor that can ultimately lead to a lasting relationship. I think the type of mentorship where it's a, pleasure to speak with you again. I was hoping that you could give me 5 tips for da-da-da. Like, that is not a genuine relationship that's going to really last through the test of time, through different roles, through their promotions and your promotions and all of that. So I just wanted to offer that as a starting point for the question asker.
Love it. Yeah, I think that's super true from my experience too. You have to have a real, it can't be that you're trying to check a box. Oh, this is my mentor. I spoke to them. They worked at this brand. They get like, it has to be the best feedback is when you have trust with the person and they understand you and they want to continue the relationship. So I think that's really, really helpful. Jeff or Nisha, anything you want to add to that question?
Yeah, I'm going to say something controversial. A lot of people probably reach out to everyone on this call and people that we don't know, on LinkedIn and saying like, hey, will you be my mentor? That's really challenging, I think, because we have our own staff we're trying to mentor. And so sometimes the best mentor is right there in front of your face every day on Zoom, and it's your boss. And I think that a lot of times, for some reason, like familiarity breeds contempt. And we don't want to look up to our bosses or learn anything from them, right? Because they're busy telling us what to do or whatever. And we think we need to find the mentor outside, right? But the boss probably knows you better than anybody and knows what your strengths and weaknesses are. And you can actually develop a better relationship with them by almost treating them like a mentor in the one-on-ones and saying things like, hey, like, how did you get promoted, from IC to manager? Like, what are 3 things you think I should work on to like set myself for leadership one day or what have you?
Love it. Yep. It's right in front of you, right under your nose, who your mentor could be. And then also sometimes a product marketing too, like it could be a VP of product, or it could be a product strategy person, or sometimes they're within the org as well. It might not be your direct boss, right? I'm sure you've seen this before too, Jeff, right? Where there's another mentor in a slightly different capacity, could be sales, right? Especially for product marketing, where you're gonna have a lot of different intersections between different departments. Sometimes they're not your direct boss either, but they're right there and they can mentor you and they can give you that, depending on what kind of mentorship you're looking for. Cool. Nisha, did you want to add to that question, or do you want me to jump to the next one?
No, I mean, I would say for me, the way I look at it more as a board of directors as well, right? So it's almost like a set of people that, I mean, I have a work husband. He's somebody who knows, he'd always call it out as it is. I have, somebody who's a mentor, then I have my sponsors, and you also got to build that. It's not just one person. And then you've got your friends. Like, I think, just make that a place, and it becomes such a fun place, right? There are times where the day sucks and then you just need to have a friend that you can air. And so know those different roles as well, and make it a point to have those, because that's when work becomes really fun.
Totally. I agree. All right, next question, another anonymous attendee, maybe the same one. I don't know if that's, sometimes Zoom probably just makes people anonymous, whatever, all good. The question is, I'm transitioning from digital marketing to product marketing. What skills from my current background could be valuable in product marketing?
Oh, what converts. Like, I don't even know what else to say, but you know exactly what the customer journey is. You know what is converting, what's highly converting, what's not, what's leading to the form is being filled out. You know what's leading to a high lead score versus not. So there's so much actual insights you have on what customers are looking for, what is the path they take, what's actually converting and what's working and what's not. You can parlay that into what messaging and positioning you've seen that really works, what proof points resonate, what you should put, if you just have 50 characters describe something, or 100 or 200 characters. So you've just got so many transferable skills, is what I tell this person, to kind of take and round up and package. That's kind of my gut reaction, is what I'd say.
Yeah, I think what you're getting at, Nisha, is like they have access to all the data, right? Like digital marketing, you probably have so much more data, whether it's actually an analytics tool or just the frequency at which you're exposed to results in doing digital marketing. And that is a lot of what good product marketing should be. It should be based on the data, it should be based on the results, what actually works.
And you can actually pitch that back in like taking messaging, and you also know how you can test further and make your messaging and your positioning and your message houses work better and harder for you as well. So I would absolutely leverage all of that.
Awesome. Great answer. Jeff or Jameelah, anything you want to add to that question?
Yeah, I love Nisha's answer. I think that's spot on, that as product marketers, we're getting pulled into work a lot of times that's not just kind of traditional, narrative design and launches and all that. And we're getting pulled into what would otherwise be like life cycle marketing, and having that digital marketing conversion oriented thinking and being able to look at the numbers and figure out like, how do I get person from this stage of sign up to activation to upgrade of the credit card to talking to sales. That's perfect transition. And so maybe look for roles where, because not all product marketing roles are the same, and maybe look for roles where it's more of like a life cycle or conversion oriented product marketing role, which you often find in product-led growth companies with credit card sales, as well as consumer e-commerce companies.
Jameelah, anything you want to add?
No, I think they really covered it. And just again, on having that data, another element that's a superpower is segmentation. You've been able to target different audiences through different channels in digital marketing. So you understand some of the nuances of maybe the TikTok channel tends to skew younger versus what you're doing on Facebook. And so you kind of understand some demographics and other aspects of a customer segmentation that are also going to be incredibly valuable to a product marketing lens as well.
Totally. Awesome. All right, we'll jump to our next question. This is from Madison. She's asking, if you were the first PMM at a small to medium-sized organization, and it's the first PMM that they've ever had at the organization, what are some tips you would give for helping define your role within the marketing team and how to communicate the value or purpose of the role to the broader company? Age-old question for product marketing, right?
Maybe I'll kick off now. I haven't been a solo PMM, but I have established product marketing from scratch in 2 organizations now. And so definitely can resonate with the challenge that this person is facing in terms of people kind of not understanding what product marketing really is and what's the value prop of product marketing to the organization, essentially. So I would say, number one, the best way to start to establish your role and having impact is to have an impact. So what I mean by that is really in those early, within 60 days, I would say to think about what is a quick win that you can, quick win opportunity that you've identified that you can implement, especially in an area that is a non-gray area. So of course, as we know, as you go into inbound, there's some gray areas with product. And as you go into outbound, there's some gray areas, maybe with sales enablement or other teams. But there are certain aspects of product marketing that are usually not that controversial. So focus on those non-controversial portions of product marketing first and find a quick win to show the impact, whether that is developing a segmentation that hasn't really existed in the organization. Now, those can take time, but at the very time, you can start with archetypes, maybe a 2x2 of here's your market landscape. You could start with competitive intelligence, which tends to be a less controversial area of product marketing. And that's something that could deliver value to the organization very quickly, come up with actions that are actually going to prove out that this lens is a valuable way of thinking about your market and your marketing strategy. And so that to me is number one. The second piece is then to go and really have, honest conversations about what's not working. So as I mentioned earlier, this is a value prop exercise for yourself to the organization. So same as product marketing, what do? You talk to the customers about their pain points. You talk to the customers about, what problems they have to solve. And so I think doing a little bit of that customer research, meeting your cross-functional stakeholders as you join or as you're kind of trying to build your function is really important to help you figure out the messaging that's going to work for that audience ultimately. And then I think from there, oftentimes what's really helpful is to go and sell in your vision of what product marketing can be from the top down. So I know that may be a little bit controversial. We all want to be collaborative and you don't want things to necessarily rock the boat a ton. So you want some alignment, and that's why you did that customer research and talking to your stakeholders to start. But with change management, it often requires you to get rid of gray as fast as possible. And so from that perspective, I think it's important to gain buy-in from the leaders of your organization or your team, and figure out who the key influencers are within the organization, get them aligned, and then start to kind of, again, pick a larger project as the next way to show value that demonstrates this new scope that you're establishing as well. And then you couple your rollout of your charter. Oftentimes I like to couple the rollout of a new charter with a specific case studies on impact. So I like to say the proof is in the pudding. You wouldn't put a value prop hierarchy out without proof points. So you need to have some proof points before you try and force a definitive framework onto your organization about what product marketing is and what potential you really have to change the game there. So that's been my experience, at least.
Love that. I think that's a great answer. I think people will, if you get that quick win and they believe in you, then they will believe in the role of product marketing. They have to trust you first. And it's true for most roles, but it's especially true for product marketing. Once they believe in you and they see what you can do, then they're going to follow you as you take on more of those projects, as you said. That's a really great one. I do want to jump to next. There's a bunch of questions that came in. So Jeff, Nisha, if that's okay, I'm going to jump to the next question, and anyone can jump in and answer these, but I want to make sure we get as many of these answered as possible. This is another anonymous question. As a junior PMM, but someone who is senior in their professional career overall, any tips on where to learn about some of these core PMM skills? So where to learn for these core PMM skills? I would just say, I'll just start answering this one. If that's okay. ShareBird is great. There's a bunch of things. You're in the right place. First of all, I think there's a bunch of information on the forums within the community that you can look for. I won't mention any other PMM places to look at. Say ShareBird has so much for you, but panelists, any other places that you would recommend for learning some of these skills?
I would say PMM Alliance is another one. There is a positioning book by forget her name, it'll come to me, that you can learn from as well. But the one thing
April Dunford?
Yeah, there we go. There you go. Thank you. The thing that I like to do also is I like to go to a lot of, so I'm in the B2B SaaS industry. So I make it a habit of going to a lot of B2B SaaS websites. I go to Gong, to Airtable. There's a slew of them that I visit, and that's, Podium, Intercom. There's so many that you can just go to, and you'll start to see how they are messaging and how they are talking about, in 30 seconds, what is the value of a product. You'll start to see like patterns there. And I use that very often, quite frankly, as my learning board on what's social proof. People are talking about what case studies, how they're talking about the positioning, what resources they have, what blogs, what guides. What's actually there. It's amazing how much you can tell and learn from a strategy right by looking at people's websites.
I love that answer from you, Nisha, because I think many of us look to HubSpot and we look at the product marketing from HubSpot. So I love that you're looking at other companies too. Like we're all doing that, which is so true. Everybody, Apple's doing that, right? Like if you follow the product marketing pyramid, Apple's somewhere near the top, they're probably looking at maybe looking at HubSpot. I don't know, right? So I love that answer from you. I think that's great. Let me jump to the next question. Jeff, I'm going to volunteer you for the next, that hopefully you feel confident in an answer. I only pick one. How do you feel about the current hiring environment? Thoughts on either staying put or making a jump?
Oh man, you gave me the hard one.
I did.
Okay. So I think on one hand, this is a tough time, right? And this is a downturn, and just like downturns in 2008 and before, it's probably a good idea if your boss is nice to you, if you like the work, right, to maybe stick it out for a bit right now, because you could end up going somewhere else that has layoffs. And I've seen this happen. People leave right now and they go to another place and there's a layoff in a month, right? So I would recommend maybe considering, if it's not that bad there, to stick it out this year and see how next year looks. On the other hand, if you feel like you're being mistreated, right, and you feel like you've tried everything to overcome all that, and you're just not happy, sure, you can make the jump. Just know that this isn't like the last 10 years. I think we got very accustomed to the zero interest rate environment of the last 10 years, if you will. And this is a different time, this is wartime. And so you have to be a little bit more careful.
I think that's sound advice. All right, two more quick questions. I have two from I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Wadness. I'm gonna go with your second question, and anyone can answer this. Can you provide practical advice on how PMMs can become product experts? We talked about that a little bit before with demoing. Specifically on the back end technical side, how do you know what's worth knowing versus what is not worth knowing?
You gotta, I would say you got to start with talking to people. Like it's just simple, as simple as that. You got to talk to your product managers. You got to talk to your technical managers. You're not going to get all the information that's perfectly handed to you, in the way and the form you want it. That's part of the journey, right? So it's being able to listen, understand what, and sift through what is important versus not. I mean, I've been involved in those conversations, and it's also being able to then connect the dots on somebody might know one part, the other person might know the other part, but it's like, then it's, putting it together and maybe even visually showing it yourself. So I think it's just about, talking, if there is a documentation, flows, knowledge bases, leveraging that as well, become a really good researcher and take all that information in. That's kind of how, because I've meandered my way through. Jameelah, I'd love to hear your perspective.
Yeah, I was just going to add, one of the ways that I've kind of thought about the back end is, as a customer, like what's going to impact my experience? What if then statements are going to change the way that my experience of the product actually is. So one product that I was working on was a fraud detection product at Amex. And so, probably maybe you were working on the one 3D Secure back in the day.
Wait, I worked at ID Protect and ID Protect Premium.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Did you? Oh my
God. No, it's a small world. And on the back end of that product, it's ingesting a whole bunch of data that you put when you're checking out for your transaction, and ultimately it's spitting out whether or not it thinks you're doing a fraudulent transaction or not. So I was like, okay, I want to understand this logic here, because the end experience to the customer is whether or not my transaction went through, if it was a real transaction or not. So I was like, okay, if I put this answer kind of wrong, like maybe I put street not spelled fully out for my address versus just ST, like what happens? So it's really starting to, each step of the journey, kind of say, okay, if this, then what for my customer? So put yourself back into that customer driver's seat, and then that's how you can figure out what's actually important. There's a lot of like stuff in the background. It doesn't actually change the logic of the customer's experience. You might not want to spend as much time diving deep into those, but just put that customer lens at the top.
That's a really good answer. I'd say the really practical way also that I've kind of dealt with this is like, if you have call recordings, like something like Gong, go listen to just 10 calls. Like, so for the person that wrote that question in, go listen to 10 calls. There's going to be 85% of them are going to be the same things that are covered, the same features, the same parts of the product. Those are the things that are going to matter. And the other, whatever's that, 25, 30%, 50, 40% of the total product will be most of the focus of your customers. Go become experts at that. The other percentage won't matter because it won't really come up much. That's a really good way just to prioritize, because you can't be an expert at everything. Over time, sure, spend years at something, then great. But if not, I'm not supposed to be answering questions. Let me go to the next question. All right, last question, probably because we're kind of low on time. I think this is a really good one. We didn't quite talk about it. We kind of got to it. What do you look for when promoting someone from an IC role to a people manager role? So this is not just promotions in general, but what are you looking for to put someone in charge of other people? What are the steps someone can take to cultivate and enhance those required skills?
Is this me? Am I taking this?
Sure. You unmuted, so now you have to.
No. Yeah, this is it's review time right now. So I would love to see, everybody on our team watching this recording. So the situation with manager, it's interesting. On one hand, I think there was a lot of opportunity to become a manager, at Calendly over the last couple of years, even if you were a first-time manager, because we were growing so quickly, like a lot of other companies. And so we were growing and more staff was being, hired. And so we needed to kind of level and have managers, right? And so I actually promoted, and I think this is something that makes me very happy, is promoted a couple of people who had never been managers before from ICs into management, and they had tried to become managers at other places, maybe, and they hadn't. And so that's something that makes me very happy that we were able to do that. And I think something that I looked for was that they were really good as an IC, and I didn't even have to think about their work. Everybody loved their work, product managers, sales leaders, marketing. They were amazing IC, and it actually almost pained me for them to become a manager because I would lose that amazing IC. And I knew that I already trusted them in that, and it was just a matter of getting them to be able to replicate that with others that were reporting to them, right? And so I think that's one example of somebody that could do it. In this particular environment, I think it's a little bit more challenging because there's just, we're not growing as quickly as adding as we might have been like over the last 5-7 years. And so there's just less opportunity to get promoted from IC to manager. And so I'd say in this type of situation is continue to just do the work really well and take things off your boss's plate, right? Anticipate things that your boss deals with from a leadership perspective and take them off their plates. I have one manager who constantly comes to me, he's like, hey, I can do that for you, Jeff. And it's like some type of managerial thing with some other, like a product leader or whatever. I'm like, sure, and that's like an example of just being proactive, I think, that positions you well to become a manager later.
That's great. Replicate your manager so they see you as a manager, right? Like I think that's good in taking things off their plate. Nisha, Jameelah, anything you want to add to that? I think we have just a minute or so here.
Yeah, I'd say, no, I really like Jeff's answer, like know your job. The person I actually just promoted somebody, and I'd say the person was knocking it out of the park. I didn't really have to manage. I knew the quality was like A+, and they were also teachers at heart, so they wanted to scale themselves, and that's important. You could see that they wanted to scale, and they got a lot of pride in helping others, and they were already doing that. And they're also really good communicators, so communicating the work that's being done and making sure people are staying across the org. So those are kind of the characteristics I look for beyond you're doing an A+ job. Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Jameelah, did you have one note before we hand it over to Alex?
Just quickly, I think there was also a question in the chat as well around like those sticky situations that came up earlier. I think this is definitely somebody who is able to bring structure through ambiguity, which is often what you need to do as a leader. So you're going to get this crisis. It's no one knows what to do. And you're like, okay, guys, we're going to do 1, 2, and 3. The ability for somebody to bring that structure to something that seems amorphous or really complex is ultimately what's going to make a person reporting into them more successful. So I definitely look for somebody who's able to do that through those sticky situations, or through something that's just really, really complex. Because again, to Nisha's point, that's what's going to allow them to scale their impact.
Awesome.
Plus one to that. Completely agree.
Totally. All right. Well, thank you to the three of you for spending the time and taking all these questions. And thank you to the audience for tuning in. Before we hop off, let me hand it back over to Alex, who's just going to wrap us up here.
Yeah, that was awesome. Like an awesome panel. Everybody on the event, this event was recorded and it'll be available to you on the event page after this. And yeah, that was really, it's when you bring great minds together. There's 4 great minds. So thank you for being on this panel. Since we have 1 minute, I'll just give one quick announcement. I didn't send the link before, but I'll send it now. We're interested in starting to develop more training offerings to help more experienced professionals really take their work output and their outcomes to the next level. And so if you can take just 60 seconds to fill this survey out. We'd love to know where you're trying to develop and grow as a product marketer, and we'll send you a $5 Starbucks gift card. But so I think I sent that to everybody. And otherwise, we'll send a follow-up email with details here too. But thank you, everybody, for attending, and thank you, panel, for sharing your knowledge.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. It's fun.
Yeah. All right. Take care, guys. See ya.